I often ask myself what would happen if the Pittsburgh Windmill, Harry Greb, not given the Georgia Deacon, Theodore Tiger Flowers, a shot at his middleweight championship belt. Who would be the first black middleweight champion in boxing history? I often wonder what would happen if Jack Johnson had not made a deal with the government. Would he still be heavyweight champion of the world? Would Jess Willard knock him out in 26 rounds in Havana, Cuba, 1915? I also wonder, why didn't Jack Johnson give other black fighters an opportunity at his title? Fighters such as Sam McVeigh, Sam Langford, Harry Wells, Joe Jeanette, Jeff Clark, the Joplin Ghost. Was it outside forces involved in those decisions? You see, Jack Johnson was a colored heavyweight champion in 1903 when he would defeat Denver Ed Martin. And he would have to chase Noah Busso, Tommy Burns, around the world just to get an opportunity at his heavyweight championship title. Only to have Tommy Burns receive $30,000 for a guarantee. And his knockout of Tommy Burns was not recorded because the establishment would pull the plug on that camera so those would not see the destruction from a black fighter engaging in a white fighter. And what was interesting is that Tommy Burns was from Canada, Jack Johnson was from the United States of America. Harry Wells, I wonder what would have happened if Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Molar, would have kept his obligation to Harry Wells in a committed contract that was signed in 1924 to face Harry Wells. Jack Dempsey would renege on that deal. And for that reason, he was barred from fighting in the United States. Well, I should say New York. He couldn't fight in New York. And I'd rather say fight in the United States because he should have been stripped of his title, but he was allowed to take a 3-year hiatus, no title defenses, and come back and select a light heavyweight champion. The America's light heavyweight champion. His name was Gene Tunney. Harry Wells had faced Sam Langford 22 times or so. He was a colored heavyweight champion. Balinsiki would become the light heavyweight champion, the first black light heavyweight champion, 1922, when he would defeat George Carpentier. He would knock him out. But then he would lose it a few months later to Mike McTeague in Dublin, Ireland. Mike McTeague was Irish, and that fight took place in St. Patrick's Day. Sam McVeigh, the Oxnard Cyclone. Oh, what a war he had with Joe Jeanette in 1909. In fact, he fought Joe Jeanette 3 times in 1909. 49 rounds. Joe Jeanette would go down 27 times. Sam McVeigh couldn't breathe, literally couldn't breathe. So that fight had stopped. The Libreville Shadow, Joe Jeanette. He was a colored heavyweight champion. He'd be in a room with fighters such as Obie Walker, Norma Violent Ray, Al Walker, an outgainer. Peter Jackson was a colored heavyweight champion when he would defeat Old Chocolate, George Godfrey, would knock him out in 19 rounds. But he asked John O'Sullivan for a title shot. John O'Sullivan had drew the color line and stated he would never fight a black fighter in defense of his title. Here you have Joe Jeanette. Had bare-knuckle fights before he turned professional. Knocked out men in the street. Lived in Hoboken, New Jersey. He was a hell of a fighter. Was in the ring with Jack Johnson 10 times. Now I know that Joe Jeanette was a great fighter, but I also know Peter Jackson, Black Prince, was an outstanding fighter. How do I know this? He went 61 rounds with gentleman Jim Corbett. And it wound up becoming a draw because they kept letting the rounds go because they thought that black fighters couldn't withstand the heat. And they wanted Jim Jeffries to eventually get a shot at the title. And they wanted Jim Corbett to face John O'Sullivan in 1892. And that happened at the Carnival of Champions in New Orleans. And Corbett would wind up knocking out John O'Sullivan in 21 rounds. Peter Jackson, I believe, if given an opportunity with John O'Sullivan, would have demonstrated the exact same thing. But you see, I would never get that opportunity to know the truth because I was denied that opportunity. I was denied seeing what would happen to these great fighters. The history books will not allow us to have these conversations. We would have to create fantasy fights for that. And that should never be the case. Because boxing is for all. Black fighters should fight white fighters. Mexican fighters. Black fighters fight black fighters. White fighters fight white fighters. Black fighters should get the same exact opportunities as other nationalities. And that has never been the case. Charles Jack Blackburn was a hell of a lightweight in his day. He would take on Dave Holly and Joe Gans. As a matter of fact, he would even face Harry Greb later in his years. But he never got a shot at a world title. Sam Langford was a colored heavyweight champion 5 times. He'd faced them all. He called out Jack and Mike Twin Sullivan. He called out Gene Tunney. He called out Boilermaker Jim Jeffries. He called out Jack Dempsey. He called out Jack Dillon and many others, and he was denied of the opportunities. So he would have to face Sam McVeigh several times. He would have to face Battling Jim Johnson 15 times. He would have to face Harry Wells 22 times. He got a shot in 1903 with Joe Gans. It was not for the title because of a weight disparity. He got a shot to face Joe Walcott. Non-title bout. Wound up becoming a draw. Harry Wells, known as the Brown Panther, was blackballed. And it's unfortunate because our history will have an asterisk to his name. Black fighter would not be fairly treated. Jack Johnson would take on Stanley Ketchum, who was a middleweight. Why did Joe Gans have to lay down for battling Nelson? Why did Joe Walcott, 1904, get robbed with George Dixon? These questions can never be answered with a straight face. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters would never be forgotten on my channel. Thanks for listening. Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. If you want to learn more about Sam Langford, visit Hardline Boxing. Visit Random Acoustic Thoughts. Or you can just check out my page, Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. And I cover all these black fighters because they deserve to be covered.